Some big SEC scheduling news as a pair of SEC schedules were officially leaked. Of course, guys, a quick reminder, next Wednesday, December the 13th, that is the official date in which all of the schedules will be released for the 2024 season. We already know opponents, but we'll actually find out when teams are playing who. So that's always, you look forward to that because obviously that matters, right? When you play, who you play, where you play, all that good stuff. It goes a long way in putting together a championship caliber season. So we will find that out next Wednesday. But a pair of schedules, Georgia and Ole Miss, were both released over the last 24 hours or so. Some of it because you got alumni associations that are releasing dates. You got people, just kind of sort of figuring out and crossing off their list. Okay, this is when the non-con is. This is when these matchups have been released. So we've got Georgia and Ole Miss right now. I would assume the rest, I should say, will come out next Wednesday. The Georgia schedule for 2024 looks like this. Dawgs open up with Clemson in Atlanta, Georgia on the 31st of August to open up the season. Then they play Tennessee Tech, at Kentucky, bye week, at Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, at Texas, bye week. So 2 bye weeks. Everybody, I think, is going to get 2 bye weeks. Then Florida and Jacksonville, at Ole Miss, Tennessee, UMass, and then close it out with Georgia Tech. Now, the first thing that jumps out, guys, compared to the schedule this year, this is a gauntlet for the Dogs. Don't forget, we got a 12-team college football playoff. So, does Georgia have to go undefeated? Do they have to go 11-1? No, they do not. Also, for all the South Carolina folks, of course, you notice there is no Gamecocks. In case you missed that, South Carolina will not play Georgia, Tennessee, or Florida for the first time since 1991. This, of course, happening because of the expansion of the SEC, Oklahoma, and Texas joining the league. So a lot of stuff being thrown around, thrown for a loop, if you will. But the Dogs, again, opening up with Clemson and Atlanta. That's a tricky game, obviously. At Kentucky, your first road game. Who knows what the Cats will be? They may be taking on their former quarterback, Brock Vandagriff. Of course, he just committed to Kentucky. Then at Alabama. So your first 2 SEC games at Kentucky, at Bama. Then you got a dangerous Auburn team. Of course, it's in Athens, but still a dangerous Auburn team at Texas, which we see what Texas is doing in the college football playoff. What's Florida going to be? We'll see. You get them off the bye week also. At Ole Miss, right? Tricky game there with Lane Kiffin and company. The Tennessee game. So I think it's safe to say, guys, this Georgia schedule, and certainly nobody's going to feel bad for the Dogs because the schedule they got this year, and most folks would say it was a cupcake. It was super easy. This schedule's a gauntlet. I mean, this schedule is an absolute gauntlet, guys. You're going to get potentially the national champion is going to be on your schedule. And at worst, 2 of the 4 in the college football playoff this year are on that schedule. Of course, guys, all attention will be on that game at Alabama, but that game at Texas is going to be an absolute classic as well. A really good schedule, a fun schedule, entertaining schedule. Of course, that Georgia-Clemson game in Atlanta is going to be a lot of fun, but this is a gauntlet of a schedule. Georgia gets this through this thing 11-1 or 12-0. I mean, my goodness. But again, you only probably need to win double-digit games, and that's a schedule where, hey, Georgia could go 10-2, lose to Texas and Bama. They're easily still in that 12-team playoff, I think. Also, guys, of course, the Ole Miss schedule has been released. This is, per the Ole Miss Alumni Association because they leaked a bunch of dates. So this is what is thought to be Ole Miss's schedule. They open up with the Furman Paladins on August 31st. Then they have Middle Tennessee State, at Wake Forest, Georgia Southern. A very, very easy first 4 games. Then you have Kentucky at home to round out the month of September. So, I mean, a good chance that Ole Miss starts this next season 5-0. Then the road trip to kick off the month of October to Columbia, South Carolina to take on the Gamecocks. That game rumored to be scheduled on October the 5th. Then you've got at LSU, so at South Carolina, at LSU back-to-back. Bye week then for Ole Miss. They then get the Oklahoma Sooners on October the 26th. Then at Arkansas, Georgia at home, bye week at Florida, and Mississippi State. Again, guys, I think everybody in the SEC is going to get 2 bye weeks this year. I don't know if it's just one of those weird years where because of when the season's starting, but everybody I think is going to get 2 bye weeks. So you get 2 bye weeks now this year, or next year, excuse me, in 2024. Obviously those road trips, the at LSU is tough. I mean, at South Carolina, at LSU back-to-back is tough. We know Williams-Brice Stadium, one of the most raucous environments in all of college football. And, of course, LSU right there plays second fiddle to no one. So that stretch of South Carolina, LSU on the road, Oklahoma at home, at Arkansas, you'd imagine an improved Arkansas team, and then Georgia. Then you got to go to the Swamp. So it gets really, really tough for Ole Miss late in the season. But this really reminds me of a traditional Kentucky schedule where the first month or so of the season is going to allow them an opportunity to get their feet under them, to build some momentum. Of course, Jackson Dart, we know, unless something changes, of course, which it can in college football, but Jackson Dart is supposed to be back next season. So you'd imagine Ole Miss will be looked upon highly to have yet another big-time campaign, 10 wins this season. I think Ole Miss is probably looked at as a team that potentially could be in the college football playoff next year with it going to 12 teams. So, a manageable slate for the most part. Again, things get really tricky later into the season. The road trips at South Carolina, at LSU, at Arkansas, at Florida. I think for 3 of those 4, you just kind of wonder what they're going to be next year, right? Three of those 4 were not very good this year. And then LSU replacing Jaden Daniels and a lot of their big-time production as well. And then that Oklahoma game in Oxford to close out the month of October. So a manageable schedule, get a schedule that allows you to get your feet under you early, but certainly the challenges of SEC play hit you late. And then, guys, like I mentioned, going back to Georgia, the gauntlet that awaits the Dogs in 2024. And again, I don't know there's many SEC folks going to shed a tear after the schedule they had this year in the regular season, but it's going to be interesting. I think the way we look at schedules, too, is probably going to change because, again, 12-team playoff. You don't have to go undefeated. There's some room for error there, right? So even for a Georgia that's got Bama and Texas both on the road, there's room for error, but not a ton. But not a ton when you're the Georgia Bulldogs. So those are the schedules of Georgia and Ole Miss for the 2024 season. Full SEC schedule release set for next Wednesday, December 13th.